Okay, using Audacity to record the audio for better audio quality along with this microphone. Um, it is my contention that uh, capitalism is not a system. At least it's not a socioeconomic system. So, in order to examine this topic, you first need to look at, define what is a system and what is capitalism. First, we will look at what is a system. A system is an interconnected network of things or ideas. Now, for things such as you can have an electrical system where electrons and the associated energy go through a circuit through these logical gates from one point to another, and they're causally connected in a logical manner. The same thing would happen with a plumbing system. There, it is water or liquids that are passed through in that logically connected network of a thing called water. Well, in the case of a socioeconomic system, it is an interconnected network of money in relation to goods and services. That would be the socioeconomic system, and it is logically controlled through laws, government, and agreements between the parties that are part of that network of money, along with goods and services that are created and exchanged for that exchange for that money in relation to the funds that are distributed through that socioeconomic system that is logically governed by laws and agreements and understandings between the parties that are within and are part of that system. However, people continue, including the best and brightest, continue to refer to capitalism as though it were a system. Now, why do I disagree with that assumption, that belief? Well, let's define what is capitalism. Capitalism is merely the act, and it's an activity or behavior whereby one is a goal-oriented activity where the goal is to derive more money out of an activity than is put into it. With that activity, more money is derived out of the activity of a business or an investment than is put into it. That's all it is. So it's an activity of an individual or an organization or business where there's a profit motive and of just trying to get a profit out of that activity. So it's a behavior. It's an activity. It could be analogous to the activity of imbibing in alcoholic beverages, drinking, where you have the goal, where the goal is to get a buzz or just to get drunk from drinking the alcohol. And so, as a result, back in the pre-prohibition era, the abolitionists or the people, the prohibitionists, their goal was to abolish alcohol, drinking alcohol, alcohol prohibitions, and then they eventually succeeded in banning alcohol around 1920. It was around about then. So that's an activity, but it's not considered a system. It's not a socioeconomic system. Now there's the laws there's a system of laws that was implemented to ban it, but the actual activity of drinking, that's not a system. But people continue to call the activity of capitalism the goal-oriented activity. We're just trying to make money from a business. They talk as though that's a whole entire socioeconomic system, and it's not. It is merely an activity, a goal-oriented activity, where the profit is the motive. So how can that be considered a system, an overall system? I think that causes a lot of confusion, that people keep on referring to it as a system when it is not. How is that an entire socioeconomic system? I don't get it. What the thing? So there's never going to be a delineation between what is a capitalist system, a free market, whether you call it free market capitalism or not, or a hybrid socialist and capitalist system. When it becomes capitalist, and when it doesn't become capitalist, there's no way to delineate that, because capitalism is not a system. What is done is government organizes the actual system to put limits. It's the job of a government in organizing a socioeconomic system is to, among other things, determine the extent and limits of for-profit, that is, capitalist organizations and investments, and regulate them to greater or lesser extent, so as to benefit the overall community, that is, benefit overall society, and keep and prevent the profit motive, that is, the capitalists, from harming society in their activity of trying to achieve that end goal of making a profit. That is, they're engaging in the activity of capitalism, because sometimes when they're trying to achieve that profit and achieve their goal, they can trample on the consumer, the environment, the worker. Sometimes they have a real tunnel vision focus on trying to achieve that goal, and they disregard the consumer, the worker, and the environment, because doing so can often does, make it easier to achieve the goal of making a profit, that is, engaging in the activity of capitalism. So there needs to be reins, that is, regulations, to limit the capitalist. So there's no such thing as either a capitalist system or a non-capitalist system. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so I guess hopefully I made that point. I'd like to hear. You can. I'd be more than welcome to hear comments in the comment section of this video, where if anybody disagrees and thinks that there is such a thing as a capitalist system. It's my contention that there's no such thing as a capitalist system. It's not a system. It is an activity or behavior, a goal-oriented activity or behavior that individuals, businesses, or organizations engage in. And it is the job of the government to determine the extent and limitations and regulations to limit any damage, and also to determine where capitalism is beneficial. The activity of capitalism is beneficial and works more or less to meet the wants and needs of society. For instance, in the case of a basic need of, say, food, generally we rely on almost entirely on capitalists to provide our food through the grocery stores that are for profit. Now, of course, there are food shelves. That's in a case where those are non-profits. They are not capitalists, but however they're purchasing or receiving donations of almost entirely from companies that are for profit, and also for example, clothing. That's also almost entirely, unless you're in the military, you can maybe receive your uniform from the government, but otherwise you're almost entirely dependent on capitalists to provide the clothes that you can purchase. And so now, like if I would ask the anti-capitalists, for instance, is that if they do not want capitalism, how are you going to depend on the government to make your clothing? And are they going to be the ones that determine the styles of the clothing? Are they going to tell us what to wear? Or are we going to bring back the Mao suit, the Chairman Mao, where the citizens were forced to wear citizen uniforms? Myself, I'm not a fan of that idea. So I think generally speaking, the capitalists can provide decent clothing, and we should be able to decide what fashions to wear, what clothing to wear. But there could be changes though to labor laws and tariffs. We could increase tariffs on clothing so that we can encourage reshoring of jobs here, where the employees could have better working conditions than in the foreign factories, where they may be, for all we know, could be working in sweatshops. We just don't know because there's no determination about what kind of working conditions are. There's little to no regulations on it because, well, it's out of sight, out of mind to have manufacturing overseas. So, but if you reshore them, then we can have the U.S. labor laws, regulations, helping. They're far from perfect labor laws, but they could at least they're better than the ones that exist overseas, and oftentimes, ironically, in Marxist communist nations such as China and Vietnam. So here in the U.S., at least here, we have some better regulations generally that help protect the worker at these capitalist clothing factories versus the capitalist factories that were in China that are ironically under the Marxist communist dictatorship there. But yeah, so that's what the job of the socioeconomic system is, to determine, well, where is capitalism serving us adequately, generally speaking, to provide goods and services at adequate amounts and at reasonable prices. And generally that happens to be the case with clothing, food. But however, there's one interesting point there with medicine. I think in medicine, that's one area where it may be better served to be not dependent on capitalists, at least for prescription drugs and medical devices, because there's a tendency not to have adequate competition. And in order to have a working socioeconomic system that depends on the activity of capitalism for your wants and needs, you need to have adequate competition to keep the prices down So the consumer can choose between the goods or services, between more than one, and people will generally choose the ones that's lower price for the same given quality. However, you don't necessarily have that ability with prescription drugs and medical devices. Now, over the counter, that seems to work more or less okay when it comes to capitalists providing those over the counter drugs and medical devices, because there is competition to keep the prices lower. But that's not necessarily the case with drugs and medical devices. There's often outrageous prices charged that the vendor can get away with because there's little to no competition. For instance, if you're in a hospital, you're not going to be provided a selection. If you're about to go into surgery, where you can say, "Oh yes, I'm going to choose that medical device that's going to be implanted into me, and not that one. That one's too expensive. I want to choose that one." Yeah, when you put that device inside of me, I want that one. That's a cheaper one. Yeah, I'll go with that one. Thank you very much for showing me the menu here of medical devices that you're going to be surgically implanting me. No, you're not given that choice. There's no menu of medical devices. If you're in the hospital, you're just you get what you get, and you have to pay for it. Usually, hopefully through insurance. But if you're not, then you could be in big trouble because they're just ridiculously high prices for medical devices. It's used in surgery and also in drugs. Many of the drugs are extremely expensive too. You're not given a choice, or you're not given a different selection of which ones to choose. It's a complete failure. We're like treated as though there's something magical about these medical items, prescriptions that make it so they're so expensive, but that's not the case. There's nothing magical, nothing special about them. They need to be sterile, but so is the Band-Aid bandage you buy at the over the counter at the grocery store, a drugstore. You can buy it for a reasonable price, but they're sterile also. But it just doesn't cost that much. But you get these huge amounts for medical devices and drugs, and for no good reason really. Yeah, I've seen documentaries of in third world countries where you see doctors they'll get string some like some sort of pump of intravenous thing or something, or pump device, and it's not an implant, but it's still there. I see these they build up these things based on like plastic bottles and basic plastic tubing. It works. It's just plastic, basically. That's all it is. And they make sure it's sterile, of course, and it works. And it's just for pennies. And we're working with the same Newtonian physics here. It's nothing special, nothing magical, but it's a complete failure of our socioeconomic system, that we depend on capitalists in the area of drugs and medical devices, that has allowed these extremely exorbitant price gouging, just a systemic price gouging. And that's one area where we should not be relying on capitalists, and that's where our socioeconomic system has failed. It's not because capitalism has failed. Capitalism is not a system. Capitalism is a goal-oriented activity, and that's what capitalists do. They try to get as much profit as they can get away with, and they've been able. And if the system, if those in charge allow the capitalists to get away with something like the price gouging that's happening in the medical field, then the capitalists will get away with it. They'll get away with as much as they can, and that's where the socioeconomic system has failed, because it has allowed that kind of price gouging systemically to occur. So that's what we need to determine, is the extent and limitations, and where we need to rein in capitalists, or maybe not even allow capitalism at all to provide the goods and services that the consumer needs or demands. And I think that's one area where maybe that needs to be nationalized, is where there's in prescription drugs and medical devices where there's effectively no competition, and I think it might be better just for that to be a publicly created entity, and where there's people who would counter that would stifle innovation. I would counter that was not be the case, because it's not the capitalists that are innovating. It's the scientists and engineers, and typically they don't. Engineers and scientists, they do not get any patent rights. They have to give up their patent rights to their innovations to their employers in exchange for a regular paycheck. That's just how it works. And so they just need to get the regular paycheck, and so the motive would be just the same whether they're working for the government, the engineers, or the for-profit drug company or medical device manufacturer, because they've already, either way, they've given up their patent rights to their innovations. So they'll get the regular paycheck either way. However, it would be better if they're working for the government in terms of innovation, because when you're working for a for-profit capitalist drug company or medical device manufacturer, then the motive, then there will be an incentive for the company, for the capitalist, to stifle any innovation that would replace any currently a very profitable drug or medical device. So if like the engineer found and scientists discovered some real cheap cure for something such as cancer, but that it could not be patented, then that would be a tremendous incentive for the capitalists to stifle and say, don't go look at that anymore, because that's going to destroy our profits. But that would not be the case with a nonprofit, such as a publicly owned government-run research institution, where then the only goal would be to find a cure. That won't matter whether it's profitable enough, because they're not in search of a profit. They're just searching for a cure, and that's probably why the engineer and scientists went into their field in the first place, was to find a cure and actually help the people, help the patients. That's where we need to look at a system that works. I think that's my idea, is we need a pragmatic system that, if it does, so I ask the question: does it help the people? Is it a fair and just system? And does it protect the rights and freedoms of every individual as much as possible? And if it does, then go with that. So that's what kind of we need to look at, a socioeconomic system that works, and not and neither glorify nor demonize capitalism. So if capitalism is working, then fine, go with that. More or less, if it works more or less, just keep going with it. Just make sure it's regulated adequately, so that it protects the worker, the environment, and the consumer. And but where it's failing, where capitalists are not providing adequate goods and services at a reasonable price, then do not rely on capitalists. Then we'll do it ourselves in the public sector. So I guess that's all I have to say for now. If you're still watching and listening, thanks for watching. Mm-hmm.